Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
It's the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF World Champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 292 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm back with the man who took a week off. I gave him 7 days away. He's back now. He's back home, we're going to say here. Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how you doing, my friend? And welcome back. I did miss you even though it was just 1 week.
I'm good, man. I missed being on the show too. Still always busy, man. Still doing a lot of running around, but you know, it's nice to be able to just relax and do the show. So, yeah, I'm back. Let's go.
He's back. But anyway, jumping on to the review part of the show. No Hannah Bagley this time. Of course, she did the show with me last week. I don't think she's gone for long. I think she's probably going to be back next week or perhaps the week after. But yeah, the ideal scenario is that all three of us, me, Hannah and Eddie, all do the show at some point if the time works out and stuff like that 1 week. But we shall get to that. For now, Eddie is back. Like I say, getting on to the review part of the show. We're going to start here at the Box Gym in Cologne in Germany. Wow, I cannot believe it. Let's start with the undercard, actually. Former Tyson Fury opponent Christian Hammer returned to winning ways. He's now 26-7. A TKO win for him in 3 rounds against Patrick Kowal. He's now 7-25. But the main event, oh boy, Manuel Charr coming off 3.5 years of inactivity. 31-4, the record going in against Christopher Lovejoy. I like to call this guy the man, the myth, and not the legend. 19-0, 19 KOs. I think Christopher Lovejoy weighed 300 pounds at the weigh-in, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, he's been talking a fantastic game. He obviously was supposed to take on Dave Allen. Don King put a stop to the fight on fight week, and everyone was really disappointed. Dave Allen subsequently retired. Christopher Lovejoy, you know, he was fighting here, and Don King got a sniff of what was going on and decided to send a letter to the WBA. It was supposed to be for some kind of version of the WBA heavyweight world title, believe it or not, but Don King pulled some strings and the WBA decided to unsanction it in the end. So they did not sanction it, so it wasn't even for a belt, and that is what Christopher Lovejoy has cashed in that amazing looking record for. Not even a belt. And a poor performance at that. He was stopped in round 2. Yeah, I mean, I just cannot believe that, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I mean, boxing is, as we know, the most craziest sport. It's the theatre of the unexpected. But this is just, I just don't know what to say about this. This is just bizarre upon bizarre. You know, this guy with all these knockouts, there's rumors of him pulling people out of the crowd to fight in Tijuana, Mexico to build that record up. He goes out to Germany. Manuel Charr, who I think got shot outside a kebab shop about 4 or 5 years ago when he met an online troll in person, and he ended up getting shot. 3.5 years out the ring, and he gets in there and takes him out in 2 rounds. And off the back of that, Lovejoy has now tweeted afterwards, "Dave Allen, where you at?" And he's actually spelt Dave Allen wrong. Not to mention when Charr knocked him out, Charr did a terrible attempt at a cartwheel and fell flat on his backside. The whole thing was quite a spectacle, I think, is the only thing I can call it, Eddie. I know you didn't see it, and I wish I could say the same for myself, but what's your thoughts on this crazy, I don't even know what to call it, scenario, whatever it's called?
Well, the cartwheels and all of the crazy smack talk and them misspelling the easy names just turns out that, it kind of represents what the card represented. I mean, I'm not going to say the whole card itself. I don't know about that. I didn't really see it, so I can't really say what it was, but the main event itself was kind of crazy. I mean, I respect Manuel Charr. He was, former title challenger, former titleist, I think, if I can remembering correctly, if memory serves. But just this guy Lovejoy basically talk about he's another one saying I'm a savior of the division, I'm this, I'm that, I look this, and then you get in there and with a guy who's been 3 years out the game, hasn't even been in the ring for 3 years, and he comes in and stops you in 2 rounds. I think we need better saviors than that for our sport. You know what I'm saying? No disrespect, but the reality is, man, you see a lot of these guys with these padded records, and they come in and they want to say, how great they are and what they can do and how special they'll be, and put them in there with somebody good. And it's like, this sport requires dedication. You don't get in the ring 300 pounds. Now, I'm not saying he could be a real big guy, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know what his heaviest weight was, but if you're 300 pounds and you're under 7, and if you're well under 7 feet tall, that ain't gonna make it. You know what I'm saying? Unless you're an offensive NFL lineman or something. But in this sport, I don't know, man. I just don't think it's rare. There's only one guy that I know that does that pretty regularly, and that's Big Baby. He's able to do it, and he knows how to utilize that. But I don't see other guys doing it, especially somebody with that limited experience and also limited opposition. You're gonna get in there with a guy who was a former title challenger or former titleist. So it's just funny, the whole event, and the cartwheel, like I said, kind of represents the rest of the card. So that part of the card. So I kind of wish I did see it, so I can kind of have something to laugh about, I guess. But I don't know how interesting the fight was up to the point of him getting knocked out, but it just doesn't seem likely that he could have put up much of anything, especially hearing that he got stopped in 2 and didn't look good before it. So I don't know, Joe. I don't know what to make of it.
No, neither do I, to be honest with you. But he's 6'5", Lovejoy, 37 years of age now. That is hopefully the last time we see him. He is a circus act. Moving out now, I cannot believe we wasted that much time on that card. Moving out now to the Manchester Arena. Over here, some real stuff. A good debut win for Ellis Hopkins. She is now 1-0. It was a points win over 4. Also another win for highly touted amateur Solomon Dakers. He's now 1-0. It was a 6-round points decision for him. Elsewhere on the card, where shall we start here? I'm going to start actually with Tommy Mccarthy fight. Tommy Mccarthy on the card, obviously. A good win for him, actually. It was a bit of a statement, really. He's now 18-2. He was able to KO in 6 rounds Alexandru Djur, who's now 19-5. It was for McCarthy's EBU cruiserweight title. Djur down once in the 4th and once in the 6th, both from body shots. I think he did really well to stop his man there, because he's been in there with some decent guys. I think he went the distance with former world champion Krzysztof Wlodarczyk, if I'm not mistaken. So that was quite impressive, because Tommy McCarthy, not really known as a banger, and he started quite fast with his power shots and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that one. That was a big statement from him. Elsewhere on the card, Dalton Smith with a win against Lee Appleyard. He was able to TKO him in 6 rounds. It was for the vacant English super lightweight title. Dalton Smith, 8-0. Absolutely unbelievable performance. Absolutely punch perfect. Seriously, it was laser-like. I think he's one of the top prospects in the UK. I haven't always kind of paid that much attention to him, but I sat there, watched it the other night, and I was thoroughly impressed. Lee Appleyard as well. He showed up with determination, with motivation. He was there to win the fight, and I thought that Dalton Smith just started beating the hell out of him in the end. And it was the right thing to do to stop the fight. Elsewhere on the card, Gamal Yafai, an upset, a real big upset. He's now 18-2. It was a unanimous decision over 12 rounds against Jason Cunningham, who's now 29-6. Cunningham now the new European super bantamweight champion. Cal Yafai as well, down 3 times in the fight. I think it was the 2nd round, the 4th round, and the 6th round. an absolute shocker. I mean, it had the distance written all over it. Neither guy really known as a big puncher. I don't think either guy is really, truly good enough to be European champion. And I know that sounds a bit overcritical, but that's how I feel. I don't think Yafai is, I think we've seen it there, but I don't think he was fantastic. I remember the way Gavin McDonnell beat him with ease, and I think Gavin McDonnell was the underdog against him for some reason. I remember when he was turning pro as well. I think Eddie Hearn told a story about how he walked into the gym one day and he could hear this banging against the heavy bag, and he was saying, "What is that? Who's that hitting that thing there? Like he hits like a train." And it turned out to be Gamal Yafai. But it just hasn't translated into the pros, and it hasn't ever been a thing. He's not really been a big puncher. Cal Yafai, his brother, has obviously been the much more successful fighter, being a former world champion. But yeah, I like Gamal, but yeah, it wasn't good for him. I mean, he showed a lot of heart. He kept trying. You cannot knock his determination. He did not take a backward step all night. And I think at times that was probably his downfall. He kept walking into shots. He kept walking forward as well, just in straight lines all the time. Very, very easy to time for Cunningham, who is quite limited, let's be honest. But I'm so pleased for Cunningham because he's a guy that had no chance. They had him as a 25-1 underdog to win on points, and he pulled it off with ease in the end. Elsewhere on the card, going to talk now about Lerone Richards. He picked up a win. He's now 15-0. It was a win there for the EBU European Super Middleweight title, which was vacant. He was able to beat with relative ease. He pretty much shut out the Italian Giovanni De Carolis. No surprise there. Lerone Richards, not really known for stepping on it and trying to get the stoppage, so a points win for him on, in the bookies and whatever, was printing money, to be honest with you. And it was wide. It was as wide as can be. De Carolis now 28-10 with a draw. Lerone Richards 15-0. I really, really want to see him stepped up, though. I feel like he is another guy that really should be involved in some of these domestic scraps. He hasn't really done any of that. He's been with Frank Warren. He's now with Eddie Hearn. I think he needs that kind of big fight to kind of, get the I guess, casual boxing fans behind him, because at this moment in time, I don't think he's really got much of a fan base. I don't think the hardcores enjoy him too much, and I don't think the casuals know him too much. So he's in a bit of a difficult position, despite being European champion and technically very sound. He's definitely good enough to to be a top fighter in the division. He just needs the fights, I think. Elsewhere on the card, Joshua Buatsi now 14-0, a TKO in round 4 against Daniel Blender dos Santos, who's now 15-1. It was for Buatsi's WBA International Light Heavyweight title. Dos Santos down once in the second and once in the fourth prior to the stoppage. Very brutal knockout. I mean, it's going to be probably one of the best knockouts you're going to see all year, but it wasn't really unexpected, I mean, it was a dreadful fight in terms of the opponent for Buatsi. I don't think the guy had much more than a week's notice for the fight. It's not the first time that's happened. It was a complete and utter mismatch. This guy, I think, had beaten 1 or 2 guys, maybe 3, with winning records, and those winning records were, with a bunch of losses to go with those winning records. So yeah, the guy was really padded, and we all knew that. And I think he needs to step it up as well in terms of his opposition before people lose interest, which I think a lot of people have already done, by the way. He's got undoubted talent, but yeah, I did not like the mismatch, and it was quite dangerous, that matchmaking in the end. Moving out now to the final card to mention of the review part. It took place at the Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, USA. Over here, I'm going to start with the undercard. They only showed 3 fights on the telecast that I watched, and all 3 fights were absolutely brilliant, by the way. I'm going to run through the results real quick. A good win for prospect Javier Martinez. He's now 17-0. He was able to beat unanimously over 10 the big punch in Juan Carlos Burgos, who's now 34-5 with 2 draws. A bit wide on the cards, I think, in the end, because that was a great fight. an all-out war. After that came Daniel Roman, former unified world champion. He's now 29-3 with a draw. He was able to beat unanimously over 10 Ricardo Franco, who was 25-3. Franco himself was another big puncher, and it was an all-out war once again. Danny Roman, I feel like sometimes fights with not that much defense. I think he is a kind of face-first type of fighter, which I don't really like in terms of longevity. I like this guy, Danny Roman. I got a lot of time for him. He's a really nice guy, but I'd like to see more smarts in his defense. I think everything else he does is pretty much perfect. But, I understand boxing is an entertainment business more than a sport most of the time, or if not all the time. But yeah, I don't want to see him, in all these wars every single time he fights. I don't think it's good for him. He gets hit a little bit too much for me. And yeah, I was, happy with his performance. I thought it was quite impressive. And it was, again, a little bit too wide on the cards, I felt. Everyone had it close apart from the scoring judges. But, a good win in the end. And he's right back in the picture, really. And he's probably one of the best fighters. Well, he is one of the best fighters in the division. He's calling out, he was calling out the winner of the main event, which we're going to talk about in a second. The main event. Brandon Figueroa, 22-0 with a draw. He was able to KO in 7 rounds Luis Nery, the previously undefeated 2-weight world champion, who was 31-0 going in, now 31-1. It was for the WBA Super Bantamweight title, which Figueroa held, and Luis Nery's WBC Super Bantamweight world title. Now, Nery was down and he was counted out from the body shot in round 7. Figueroa, we had him on the show, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Really nice guy, really respectful young man that puts in the hard work and is a hungry fighter. A lot of determination, and just above everything else, a really nice guy. If you listen to the interview and all the interviews I've done with him, he even refers to me as sir and stuff like that. He's really polite, really nice guy. And yeah, it was an absolute firefight once again. The two guys came out swinging straight away from the first bell. They were going to war. I felt early on that Nery was the more compact fighter with the tighter punches. I felt Figueroa was a little bit too loose, a little bit sloppy looking at times as well. Nery, for me, was the much smoother boxer, but Figueroa wasn't looking to win on points. It was clear to see. And through the first 4 rounds, it was an all-out war. And I already wrote in my notes at that point, can Nery keep up with this pace? And the ultimate answer was no. In the end, Brandon Figueroa was able to beat the fight out of Nery, and he broke his heart, and that's his nickname. That is his nickname, the Heartbreaker. He broke his heart. He managed to beat him up and stop him, and that body shot that he landed, it was a late reaction from Nery, and he stayed down and got counted out. And that, for me, was such a legitimate win for Brandon Figueroa, who has come up a little tiny bit untested. I mean, he picked up a version of a world title, and people were still like, oh, how can he really be a world champion? How did he become champion? Did he deserve that opportunity? I don't think so. And he kind of got, shoehorned into a belt, really. And that's me being honest. He didn't really fight any of the top guys to be in that position. However, this is a tremendous win, and this solidifies him as being the real deal for me. So very, very exciting stuff. And he will be boxing Stephen Fulton next time out. That fight's done. Stephen Fulton was there, saying his piece. He was there as a spectator and somewhat of a pundit. And that is a brilliant fight. I think, I'm going to talk more about that as the fight gets closer, but what a fight to look forward to. I think they're gonna be doing that in September. I think they've already got the date for that one. But anyway, that's it for the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part 1, the final thing to do is to welcome our sole guest on this week's podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former IBF Junior-Middleweight world champion. It is, of course, Mr. Carlos Molina. Carlos, welcome back on the show, my friend.
Joy, always a pleasure being on the show.
So, Carlos, we last had you on the podcast back in June 2020. It wasn't really an interview. We hosted an episode together, if you remember. It was the week of your fight against Michi Munoz. Let's briefly talk about what's gone on since then, Carlos. You've continued to promote a number of boxing events in Mexico. You've boxed, including Munoz, 6 times since we last spoke, and now you're ranked in the top 10 with a WBC at middleweight. You've made the pandemic work out in your favor. Tell me.
Yeah, that was the plan. I mean, it was either not fight at all and stay, and I would have never got ranked in the top 10 with the WBC, or start promoting and doing closed door events during the pandemic. So I decided, you gotta put in the work and set up some shows.
Yeah, and like I say, it is, it's a lot that you've done there. It's obviously been difficult as well, on the promoting side and the boxing side. But let's get down to the main reason you're currently speaking to me from the Hennessy Sports Bubble in Coventry, ahead of your fight Saturday against Sam Eggington. Tell me, Carlos, what do you know about Sam Eggington? Have you seen much footage on him at all?
Well, I mean, before, I just started, checking out some of his fights, and he throws a lot of punches. He comes forward, and that's mainly the thing that comes out and stands out to me.
And are they looking after you properly, Carlos? You're being treated well up there in the bubble?
Yeah, everything's good. I mean, sucks to have to be in the bubble, but yeah, everything has been as good as it can be.
And I want to ask you as well, what made you want to take this fight? Because you were obviously doing your own thing down in Mexico, promoting and fighting. You were rising up the rankings just fine before this opportunity came around. What made you want to take the fight?
I think the timing. The timing was perfect. I mean, I'm coming off 8 wins in a row, and feeling good at middleweight. And at first, they offered me the fight at junior middleweight. And I was like, no, I'm not fighting at that weight class anymore. I'm ranked number 8 with WBC at middleweight. And they're like, all right, fine. Well, they talked to Sam Eggington, I guess, and they agreed at 160. So I was like, all right, cool. And then another plus was that my promotional company is going to be associated with this event.
Yeah, King Carlos Promotions, absolutely. And
so that was important to me as far as a fighter and a promoter.
Yeah, of course, I'm sure it is. And what is the plan, Carlos, for after this fight, or have you not really thought that far into the future just yet?
You know what? The thing is, not really. I mean, it kind of is, because I got a plan. I got a whole bunch of plans, and I'm always thinking about future and everything of things that I need to do and plan out. Like, I'm already thinking about my next show that I'm gonna do in Mexico, but everything is be after this fight. So the main focus right now is winning this fight, and not just winning it, but like sending a statement out to the whole middleweight division.
Yeah. And I want to also press you for a prediction, if you have one, Carlos. If you've seen anything of Sam Eggington, he's a guy that likes to come forward, put that pressure on. He's quite relentless. However, it's worked against him in the past. How do you see the fight playing out? And if you've got a prediction, share it, please.
Well, I mean, what I was saying before when I got here, and on all the interviews with Eggington and all the interviews that I had before, I was saying that I got to stop him. I know that I'm coming to his hometown and fighting in front of his crowd, and just I got everything against me, so I gotta stop him. But what I've been thinking about was, like, really what I need to do is just dominate from the beginning, and that's gonna be my goal. That's my plan right there. I need to dominate from the first round, and if I see opportunity for a stoppage, then I'm going to go for it. But the most important thing is just, dominate.
Okay, and just finally, Carlos, I want to get your closing message just to the listeners. Of course, you've been on many, many times over the years. Our listeners know you well. Our listeners, I'm sure some of them will be supporting you for this, despite it being a UK podcast. What's your message to the guys that want to see you become victorious Saturday night?
Well, you know what? Like you said right there, the thing is that, you know what I like about the UK? They got some really, really good fans. And I feel like, even, people that are rooting for Sam Eggington, at the end of the day, they appreciate, good, clean boxing. And I feel like that's what I want them to appreciate after I win this fight. But I guess the message that I want to send out is, like, this is going to be a really good fight, This is like... This is a great matchup, and I'm looking at this not just as a boxer, but like as a promoter now, and staring at this fight and looking, at both fighters, and it's gonna be a real good one, and can't miss one on Channel 5 live this Saturday.
There you go, Channel 5. That's absolutely right. It's going to be in everyone's house all over the UK. But listen, Carlos, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, my friend. I hope you get that win on Saturday, and we'll have you back on the show sometime after.
All right, Joey. Yeah, it will be my pleasure for sure. Let's do it.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. Usually the news part, but nothing as it stands. If there is anything that develops from now to the end of the show, I will mention it on the outro. So we're going to start here with the preview part. We're going to start here at the Khimki Basketball Center in Russia. Over here, topping the bill, it's some kind of eliminator for a bridgerweight world title, believe it or not. And we've got the huge punch in Dmitry Kudryashov, 24-3, 23 KOs of those 24 wins, and his 3 losses have all come by knockout. So only once he's seen the final bell in 27 outings. He is a really, really fun fighter to watch. He's been, like I say, knocked out by Dultukos, by Ilunga Makabu, and by Olam Rawaju Duradola back in 2015, but boy oh boy can he crack. That power is very real. And on the receiving end of that, this weekend we're going to see Evgeny Romanov, 15-0 with 11 KOs himself. A good fighter, a good amateur fighter as well. He's got some decent wins in the amateurs, and this is a big jump up as a pro, But no, he was a really, really good fighter. He actually knocked out Deontay Wilder in the amateurs back in 2008. So there's a little fact for everyone listening. But no, good fighter, decent chin, and yeah, they've kind of been somewhat, I wouldn't say rushing him as a pro, but he's boxed, a bunch of guys that decent fighters I know have beaten and stuff like that. Like he's boxed a few opponents from bigger guys. He's been in there with Denis Baktov, who I remember Joshua knocking out. He's been in there with Marcelo Nascimento, a man that still gives Eddie nightmares all these years on. He was able to stop Nascimento in the 6th. He's also been in there with Sergei Lyakovich last time out. That was in November of 2020. But yeah, here he is against Dmitry Kudryashov. It's a brilliant fight there. All Russian showdown. Moving out now to Serbia. One strange fight to mention over here. Our man Asinia Byfield, 14-4 with a draw. He's in an 8-rounder against Roland Hamar, who's 5-9. All the best to Asinia Byfield. He seems to be boxing a lot of the time in Russia and these kind of places. He's fighting here in Serbia. Hasn't been on the show before, but I like Asinia Byfield. Been to a few of his fights live. Moving out now to the Sky Dome in Coventry, West Midlands, United Kingdom. We spoke to the man in part 1 who's going to be in the main event, of course. But starting with the undercard, Idris Virgo, 9-0 with a draw. He takes on Lewis Van Poach, who's 124-2. You've got Stephen McKenna, the young Irish prospect, 7-0. He's in a 6-rounder against Damien House, who's 3-5. You've got Mick Hennessy Jr., 5-1 with a draw in a 6-rounder against Paul Cummins, who's 2-48. You've got the return of Shakan Pitters. I believe it's the first the first time he's boxed, I think, since being stopped by Craig Richards back in December. He's 14-1. He's in an 8-rounder against Jermaine Springer, who's 7-2. Elsewhere on the card, let's talk about the main event now. Sam Eggington, 29-7, takes on Carlos Molina, 37-11 with 2 draws. The former IBF Junior-Middleweight world champion. It's for the vacant WBC silver middleweight title, so that's interesting straight away. Sam Eggington moving up in weight to middleweight. Really and truly, he is a welterweight. I think he was quite big for the weight. He's moved up to 154, but here he is moving up to middleweight. Carlos Molina, really and truly though, he wasn't really a big junior middleweight, even when he won the world title some years back. And he boxed down at welterweight for the likes of the Josh Kelly fight and stuff like that. So he spent, a while of his career at welterweight. So not quite sure who the weight favours, to be honest, but Molina believes it's him. What interests me here is that it's just a clash of styles. Carlos Molina, up there in age now, but still never been knocked out. And he has boxed, obviously, the guys at the very top of the sport. And Sam Eggington, you just don't know what you're going to get from him because he is relentless. They call him the Savage. He doesn't normally take a backward step, but he has been knocked out early himself. He has been, been outboxed convincingly over the distance, and I'm just not sure what's going to happen here. Like I say, he I guess needs to put pressure on Sam Eggington, and there's a chance that he could put a lot of pressure on Carlos, whose legs probably aren't the same as what they used to be, years in the past. And can he put the pressure on and kind of, outwork him? Very possibly. But Carlos, I think, is definitely the better boxer of the two. Can he be smart? He's got the experience. Will he need to use his legs? It's going to be so interesting, but I think that's got the distance written all over it. I hope if it does go to the cards that Carlos gets a fair shake on them, of course. But yeah, Carlos has been very, very active. As we know, he's been putting on his own shows in Mexico. He's already boxed this year in February. And in 2020, he was able to box 6 times through 2020. Whereas Sam Eggington, his last fight, of course, took place in December against Ashley Theophane. He boxed twice in 2020 himself. He lost to Ted Cheeseman very controversially, but it's going to be a great fight. And I like both guys, of course. Sam Eggington, a friend of the show. Carlos Molina, a much closer friend of the show. But I'm very, very, very intrigued, because Carlos has been in there with some great fighters, from Solomon Sissoko to Abbas Barao to Josh Kelly to Carlos Adames, Cornelius Bundridge, Ishe Smith, Corey Spinks, James Kirkland, Kermit Cintron, Erislandi Lara. People forget he got the draw with him back in 2011. This guy has really been round the block. So this is, there's more. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. twice. He got a draw with him in their first fight. He lost on a majority decision in the second fight. Mike Alvarado. This guy has been around the block. So this is a great fight for Sam Eggington if he were to win, but a bad one if he were to lose. Because, if you lose to Carlos Molina, who hasn't had a good win, let's be honest, a good win for quite a long time. But again, he hasn't been stopped. He's not at that point of his career where he's just, getting stopped all the time by bad guys. He's fighting a lot of Olympians and stuff like that, and in their hometowns, on the road. It's a bit of a different ball game. How do you see it unfolding, Eddie? Obviously, I don't expect you to know tons and tons about Sam Eggington, but a relentless fighter, 27 years of age, but you'd think he's about 37 because he's been in so many wars. Every fight is a war. And obviously you've got Carlos with all the experience, never been stopped. It's pretty much the boxer, the smart boxer, against the all-out aggression, face-first, younger fighter.
Well, when you say younger fighter, are we talking about, Eggington being the kind of guy who, like,
junior, yeah.
10 years, but are those 10 years used up in his body? You know what I'm saying? With all of the wars and things that he's had recently. If you look at thguys like the great Fernando Vargas, at one point in his career, his career was basically over at age 27, where he was, basically going downhill. So I'm looking at this guy, and he's had some wars. He's been in tough fights. And I'm pretty sure he still has something left in the tank, no doubt about it. But now you're stepping in there with this experienced guy who, you know, at this point can be playing the role of spoiler. You know what I mean? He's been fighting, he's been active. You know what I mean? And for guys who are up in age, who get that car, that engine revved up, and now have something behind it a little bit. Now, granted, you know, taking punishment as an older fighter can be bad, but in this situation, I don't know how much damage he's taken. He's more of a slick boxer. He has never been stopped, so he's not put himself in position to be stopped necessarily all the time. So, him stepping in there with all that experience and just that background, you know, that quality pedigree is going to be something for Eggington to have to really deal with. And I think, honestly, I mean, I don't know how the fight's going to unfold as far as who's going to win, who's going to be but as it stands, it looks like the experience may win over. But if he's really still youthful, you know, I'm talking about Eggington, you know, even though he's taking the damage and all, then he may get in there and just outwork him. You know what I mean? There's a good chance that obviously that can happen because he's going to definitely put himself in position. He's obviously not shy about punching. So, you know what I mean? He can get in there and outwork him. Maybe Carlos may be a little bit too, you know, careful with the punches, you know, with his punch count. And maybe he's too careful in general just because of the busyness of Sam Eggington. So that can also play a part. But with a guy who's got that kind of experience and has obviously had the level of opposition and he's drawn and with top level guys, he's won the title. You know what I mean? He's got that experience right there alone. Even just being in a title fight is really, really beneficial. And at any point, at any point, and going up against a guy who's, I guess this obviously being a big step up for him, it's going to be somewhat obviously uncharted territory. He's stepping in there with a former champion. So it's going to be I think it's going to be an interesting thing. I mean, I think the younger guy can outwork him. Obviously pulling Carlos Molina, I want to see him, you know, continue to get back into it and hopefully at some point get back into the mix. I mean, I see what he's doing. You know, I'm speaking from a position that I would like to be in that same position. So I'm thinking like that as well. But I think it's just going to be an interesting fight. I would love to see it. Don't know if I will, but I would love to see it and see who wins over in that situation.
Yeah, we'll see. It is an intriguing fight, and I must say that Carlos Molina is a guy who's very determined, very driven, and he's the type of guy that I think if Eggington does catch him with a few shots, I fear he could, you know, just completely forget the game plan and start going to war because he's that kind of guy. He's a stubborn guy, very stubborn. I think he'd admit that himself. And you know, there's been times in 2020 where he boxed 6 times on his own shows that he didn't look fantastic in some of those fights. He really didn't. And it's been a while since, like I say, he's had that standout win. You know, Sam Eggington's been in there with Paulie Malignaggi. He was able to beat Paulie Malignaggi. I think he got Paulie Malignaggi out of there in the end, if I'm not mistaken. That was some years back now. And that's the fight that kind of springs to mind that's similar to this. And that's my only fear. Something like that. You know, Paulie Malignaggi wasn't a big puncher who's going to take you out with one shot. Carlos Molina's not a big puncher who's going to take you out with one shot. Both guys, I think it's fair to say, have their best days behind them. There's a lot of similarities, not to mention in Eggington's last fight, he boxed 40 years old Ashley Theophane and got him out of there in quick fashion. So it's a bit of a pattern. But again, Paulie Malignaggi towards the end, I mean, he really didn't have much punching power. I like Paulie, but he didn't have, you know, he really had none. Carlos Molina's got more than Paulie Malignaggi, and Paulie Malignaggi got knocked out, you know, a few times. Carlos Molina has never been stopped, and he's been in there with brutal punches like a James Kirkland, for example, you know, and he wasn't bothered by these guys. He's never been, you know, stopped or anything like that. He's never been in a heap of trouble on the ropes getting, you know, loads of punishment. But I don't know. It's interesting. It really is. So there's a lot of interesting tangibles there. I'm obviously pulling for Carlos in that one, being a good friend of mine. Leaving that bill alone, though, moving out now to the final card to mention. It takes place at the Virgin Hotels, Las Vegas in Nevada. Over here we have on the undercard Olympic gold medalist Robisi Ramirez 6-1 in a 6-rounder against Ryan Lee Allen, who is 10-4 with a draw. Elsewhere on the card we have Elvis Rodriguez 11-0 with a draw in an 8-rounder against Kenneth Sims Jr., who's 15-2 with a draw. Elsewhere on the card we have Jose Zepeda 33-2, coming off that 2020 fight of the year for sure fight against Ivan Baranchyk. He's in against Henry Hank Lundy, 31-8 with 1 draw over 10 rounds there. That's for the WBC Silver Super Lightweight title. All the best to Hank Lundy. I'd love to see him pull off the upset, but it really would be an upset. But I tell you what, we know he will come to give it a go. He really will. But Zepeda, obviously, you'd have to say, there's levels, and he, at the minute, is on top of his game, it would seem, the way he got Baranchyk out of there. Anything to add on that, Eddie? I see you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hank Lundy's gonna get in there and he's gonna give it a go, no doubt. He's not gonna go in there with the idea that this guy's gonna be too much for him. So
yeah, Hank Lundy reminds me of a guy, Eddie, that would, even if he was about 75 years of age, he'd still fancy himself in a street fight.
Oh, 100%, 1,000,000%. That's just his personality, and guys like that, no matter who they're fighting, they're always gonna have in their mind the best chance to win, and they feel like they're better. And a guy like Hank Lundy will get in there, and his style can be problematic for different people, for different fighters, depending on what he's in there and what he does in there and what his mindset is. Well, his mindset's always like he's going to win, but realistically, what his game plan is going. You know what I'm saying? Like if you watch the first round or two of the Terrence Crawford fight, he was doing well.
He was giving him problems. I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, he was giving him problems. So you think it's like, well, you would think Terrence Crawford, I mean, he's one of the best fighters in the world right now. You would think Zepeda is, really good fighter, really tough fighter, man. You know what I mean? All that. But I feel like Hank can give him trouble. If he can give Terrence trouble, he can probably give this guy trouble too. You understand what I'm saying? So it just all depends on him. I mean, he's I guess he's at the back end of his career now. Him retiring for a while and then coming back. So, it all depends on what Hank Lundy shows up. But I feel like he can get in there and maybe cause him a little issues, give him a little work. But I feel like, yeah, I agree. It would be somewhat of a surprise to see this guy get put out or lose a fight to a guy at this point in his career.
Yeah, we definitely both want Hank Lundy to win that fight, though. If we had a crystal ball. On the main event, Josh Taylor 17-0, Scotland's very own, against Jose Ramirez 26-0. This is one of the best fights that could be made in boxing. I have been counting down the days like a kid at Christmas for this fight here. For the WBC, WBA Super, IBF and WBO Super Lightweight World titles, we're going to get to see a completely undisputed champion for the first time since Terence Crawford did it, the man that we mentioned a moment ago. One of the true best fights that can be made in boxing. Do you know what? I'm almost lost for words. I've been thinking about this fight for such a long time. I think in 2020, I believe I was kind of thinking like the best fights that can be made next year. This is one of them, and it's happening. It's just, I guess, a hardcore boxing fan's dream fight. I think though, Josh Taylor is too good for Ramirez. I think Ramirez has had some questionable wins. I particularly like the fight that they both had with Victor Postol. And also I remember Hank Lundy getting in with him and giving him trouble, but that was some years ago. Victor Postol, he's coming off that win over him, Jose Ramirez, a fight that I think Jose Ramirez lost. Josh Taylor was able to beat Postol. The cards were too wide. I think he addressed that himself after the fight, Josh Taylor, but he did win the fight, that's for sure. There's been a few though. I remember the close one with Jose Zepeda as well. He's obviously on the undercard this time. He had a shout of beating Ramirez as well when they fought. I don't know. There's just been a few close ones, and I think Josh Taylor as well beating Regis Prograis, back in 2019. Now, obviously, the pandemic came around and all that, but yeah, I think like my rankings at 140, like truly, I think I think Taylor's the best. I think Prograis is better than Ramirez, and I put Ramirez at number 3. Even though it was a close fight with Prograis, and listen, Prograis is my man. He's my man. But I think Josh Taylor won that fight quite clearly. As much as I wanted Prograis to win, to be honest, he's my friend. But yeah, I can't see a way Jose Ramirez wins this fight. I think Josh Taylor has too much for him. Big tall southpaw, body puncher, big puncher with both hands. Great chin, hasn't really been rocked or bothered by any power shots. Big amateur pedigree, just like Jose Ramirez, by the way, obviously an Olympian. But I think that this is Josh Taylor's fight to lose. I mean, that's how confident I am. I'm even gonna say I can see a stoppage, and that I don't really say that about undefeated guys that haven't really been hurt. I don't think I've seen Jose Ramirez hurt, but he does like to go to war, and that's probably his best bet. But I still think he loses if he goes to war with Taylor. Like, he is gonna get serious body shots. Remember I said that he's getting some big ones to the body. I'm sure about that. Josh Taylor. Yeah, I can see a stoppage. I think I'm leaning towards a stoppage. But if it goes to points, again, I hope they give it to the man that deserves it rather than another close one involving Ramirez that he somehow gets it on the card.
I agree with you 100%. As talented as both these guys are and as good as they are, they deserve that. You know what I mean? When you put it all on the line, and back in the day, they didn't have as many belts, and they had guys actually fighting each other more. But now, to get an opportunity at a fight like this with two guys of this level of quality is awesome to see. So whoever wins it should win. You know what I mean? It deserves to win. You know what I mean? If the scorecard's close, it's close. You know what I mean? But if it's wide, and if a guy's just clearly better, he should get the decision. You understand what I'm saying? It's really difficult in boxing sometimes. Understanding what's going on. And, this is why some of the time lay fans, guys people that don't watch boxing all the time, they get an opportunity to watch a fight like this, and at the end of the fight, they expect to see one guy win, and then the judges choose the other guy for whatever reason, business reasons. And it's always shocking. It's always bad. So let's get the right guy to win, and hopefully that happens in this particular fight.
Yeah. But no, like I say, one of the very best fights that can be made. I am just so looking forward to it. I have been for a long, long time, and I can't see a way Taylor loses the fight. That's not me being biased. I really, really like Ramirez. He's a very charitable guy. He's done a hell of a lot for people with cancer and stuff like that. He's honestly a really nice guy. He's probably the much nicer of the two. Not to say that Taylor's not a nice guy. I don't really know him like that. He's been on the show once before. But I just think he's subliminal. Is that the right word? No, that's not the right word. I just think he is sublime, is what I was supposed to say. He is honestly something special, Josh Taylor. And I think he proves it, and then I think he moves up to 147 and becomes a player in that division. That is how good he is. That is how good he is. He's been doing a little bit of training with Tyson Fury as well while he's been out in the States. Tyson Fury, for some reason, I don't think it was very clever, but he decided to let Josh Taylor rip into his body with body shots on either side, and he wasn't even flinching for him. But Josh Taylor must have been holding back, because that boy can bang to the body. But yeah, that's it though for the preview part of the show. Just before we wrap up the entire show, we've done everything else. The final thing for me to do is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a couple of seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 292 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A massive thank you to our sole guest on this week's podcast, the former IBF Junior-Middleweight World Champion, Mr. Carlos Molina. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to you, the listeners. There's no news to mention this week, so all I will say is if you do have a couple of spare minutes, please leave us a review on iTunes. It really does mean a lot. I can't stress it enough. That is fantastic when the listeners do that. Remember to tell a friend about the podcast. But that's about everything from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we shall see you all again next week.